Hello everyone and welcome to Project Insights Product Training webinar. The topic for today is Build Your First Project. So just a few things to go over before we get started. All participants will be put on mute. However, any questions you have are more than welcome. Please go ahead and type those questions into your question box, which you can find on our GoToWebinar dashboard. We will try to answer all of your questions during the session, but if we can't, we'll make sure to get to you through email before the end of the day. Or you can also feel free to email us your questions at info@projectinsight.net. Also, do know this webinar recording will be available within our Project Insight community. My name is Denise, and I will be your moderator for today. I'm here with Project Insight. If you're not already familiar with us, we're a cloud-based project management solution. We help companies like The Gap and Cisco to collaborate on their projects with a globally dispersed team, balance their resources, and provide executives with real-time reports. If you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please feel free to reach me at denise.rodriguez@projectinsight.com. Our presenter and trainer for today will be Angie Smith. She is our partner out in Canada, and she is also PMP certified. Some of the benefits of today's webinar is to be able to create your first project using inline editing, learn how to create customized task lists and Gantt charts, and gain an understanding of basic project scheduling terminology. On our agenda today, we'll learn or know where to add a project, find out the project add and edit form, learn how to use the inline editing, know the differences between duration and work, and we'll also learn how to customize your own task list, save quick selections with a personal default, and use your drag and drop and other shortcuts. So before I hand this on to Angie, I do have 2 poll questions coming right up. We'd like to know if you're currently a Project Insight customer, if you can please provide us with a quick yes or no answer. All right, let's go ahead and close and share our results. So it looks like 29% of you currently are PI customers. If this is your second time around, we do want to give you a welcome back. And for the 71% of you that are currently not PI customers, we're super excited to have you on board today. So welcome. And now for our second question coming right up. For those of you that are not Project Insight customers, what are you currently using to create project schedules? Is that Excel, MS Project, a low-end scheduling tool, or another PPM? Awesome, guys. So let's go ahead and close and share our results for this poll question. All right, so it looks like 25% of you are using Excel, 63% of you are using MS Project, and 13% of you are using a low-end scheduling tool. Awesome. So thank you guys so much for participating in our poll questions. Now it is my pleasure to hand this over on to Angie to continue with the rest of today's webinar. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, Denise. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so what you should be seeing right now is the Project Insight dashboard. And let's go ahead and collapse a couple things on here. So the first topic that you are going to see today in the session is where do you add a project in Project Insight? So Project Insight has the unique ability for you to set up a folder structure so that you can organize your information in a way that best suits your business processes and your business requirements. Now your system administrator will have some folders set up for you, and then projects can be added into those folders. So here's the folders that we have set up in this system, and let's click on the projects folder to go to that folder. Now when you do that, you can see all the projects that are in this folder. And all you need to do to add a new project is hover on the Add icon, and then you can see that one of the items that you can add is a project. So not every user can add a project. First, you must have a system role assigned to you that allows you to add a project in the first place. Second, you must have permissions to the folder where you're going to add the project. And third, projects must be an entity type that are allowed to be added to this folder. So setting up all those permissions and the roles is covered in the Secure Your Project Insight Data with Permissions webinar if you need some more information on doing that. So to add a project, just click on the project option. Now this is your project Add Edit form. And what you can do is you can actually click on the X to collapse the left navigation, and that gives you some more space on the screen to display and work with the project Add Edit form. Now the first thing that you must do is enter the name of the project. So click in that field and let's type in Financial Management System. You'll see that next to the label for the name of the project there is this red asterisk. This red asterisk indicates that this is a required field. And you can see that the name of the project is a required field. Now, if you scroll down on the Add and Edit form, you can see that there is a scheduled start date. You can see the time zone, and there are also some state fields. And those are also all required fields as well. However, these ones have some default settings that are already entered. So you could just leave them as they are without making any changes and just go down and click your Save. And that's it. That's how simple it could be to add in a project in Project Insight. You click the Add icon, you enter the name, and then you click the Save icon. However, in some circumstances, and again, depending on your business process and your requirements for your organization, you may need to change the other information on the project Add Edit form. So in this training session, since you're building your first project, you are just going to see information about these required fields and not a lot of detail about the other fields because those are covered in some other training sessions. So the scheduled start date is a required field, and it designates when you think the project will begin. Now, it defaults to the current date during the add, and you can just save the project with that current date if you need to. However, to change it, you can click in the date field, and you can just type in the date. So, maybe we put it to the beginning of the next month. Now, if you hover your cursor in the date field, you will see some help text that tells you what date format to enter. Let's just do that again. And it also tells you some keyboard shortcuts to enter in the different dates automatically, such as clicking like just a T while you're in the field will insert today's date. Now, instead of typing in the date or using some of those shortcuts, you can also click on the calendar icon and choose the scheduled start date from a calendar layer. So all you need to do is click on a date to select it. Now this scheduled start date is used when determining the start date of tasks on the project. So for example, if you have no dependencies for a task and no constraint date set for a task, then the task will default to start on the same date as the project scheduled date, or this date right here. Now the scheduled date can be a date in the future, as you've seen right here with the next month, or it can even be in the past if you needed it to be. Now you can change the scheduled start date during this add process, and you can also change this date later on after the project is saved if you need to. So you want to put in what you think the date's going to be, but then when you find out when it's actually going to be, or something else maybe changes, you can always change that scheduled start date. Now, the next option that you have is this one called Work Calendar Inherits From. Now, you can see right now that it is automatically set to the system default. But if you click in it, it brings up a list of some other work calendars. So you can see you've got other calendars set up for different countries' holidays. So there's a Canadian one and there's also a UK one. Now your system administrator will have created the work calendars for your organization. You may only have one work calendar, or you may have several, depending on your situation. Typically, a work calendar will identify the holidays and standard work days for different regions or different countries. However, it's also been used to do things like schedule, staff that are maybe doing field work and they only work 4 days a week, but they work a 12-hour day. Maybe you would set up a calendar to represent their work schedule versus people in the office, which is a 5-day work day at 8 hours a day. So it's used for different purposes, but the main one is usually for regions or countries. Now, these calendars are used to determine, when tasks are going to start and end. And each user that is set up in Project Insight is also assigned a default work calendar from this list. So when you add a project, it will set the work calendar for the project to be the same as what is set in your user profile. But then it can be changed as required. And then just to exit out of that drop-down list, you can click anywhere on the white space on the form to exit out of it. And we'll just leave it set as the system default. Now, the time zone is the next option. So when you set up a user in Project Insight, you can set the default time zone for that user. And then the time zone on the project will also default to that, but you can change it if required. So click in the drop-down for the time zone, and then just go ahead and select the time zone that is most appropriate for this project. For example, maybe we want to select Eastern Time Zone. Now, the last required field is the state. So the state has to be set for a project. And your system administrator will have set up a default state for new projects, but you can change it if required. Now, there are 5 different states, and your project must be set to one of those states. Now, the planning state is a project that is not active yet. Now, typically, your project manager will still be mapping out the tasks and the schedules for those projects that are in a planning state. And any team members that are assigned to a task that belongs to a project that's still in this planning state, those team members aren't going to see those tasks on their work list. Now, the active state, that indicates that the project is actually now ready to be worked on. Your planning's done, your team members have been assigned, and team members that are assigned to tasks for an active project will see those tasks on their task list and their work list. Then we have the archive state, and that indicates that the project is completed. So you don't want to physically remove completed projects from Project Insight because you want to retain that historical data in the system, and you want to be able to report and search on them and look them up. However, you probably don't want them included with your active projects on your project reports. So by setting a completed project to this archive state means that you can still report on it, search it, and look at the information. But by default, it's not going to be included in your active project list. You have to kind of go in and override that on reports and say to include, archive projects as well. Now, the next one, template, is not a part of the project lifecycle. A project set as a template is not an actual project that is ever going to be worked on. Rather, it is a framework that you can use to create new projects. So this reduces the amount of data entry you need to do for each new project, and also can help you to enforce standards and processes and incorporate lessons learned from previous projects. Now, a template project looks exactly like any other project with all the same project header information and tasks and so on. Now, when you create a new project based on a template, all that information from the template will be copied over into the new project. Then you can modify it as required for the new project, so you're not always starting from scratch. Now, any project templates that have been created here, they're going to appear in this Copy from Template drop-down on the Add Edit form. So to see them, just click on the drop-down for that. So you can see these are all the templates that have been set up in the system. And to use that template with this new project, Financial Management System, all you need to do is click on it. Now, I'm actually going to go back in and I'm going to set that back to no selection because we want to actually start from scratch so you can see how that looks for this session. So if we just leave that blank, then you're going to have no tasks or anything automatically created for you. Now, only certain roles can actually create templates as well. So in order to have this ability to set a project to be a template, you must be able to add your projects in the first place, and then you also must be able to create templates. And that's a system role that can be set for each user. Now the last option that you have here is the to be deleted. So this is the only way that you can really delete a project from the system. So remember that if you have a project that is completed, you want to set it to the archive state, not delete it, because you still want to retain that information. So normally you're ever going to only delete a project if it was a data entry error. Maybe you accidentally entered a duplicate project or something like that. And the delete process is a two-step process. You have to set the state to be deleted as the first step, and then there's a second step which requires that you have to actually physically delete it by clicking on a delete icon. And again, you can only do that if you have delete permissions on the project. So for now, let's click on Active because you want to add this new project and make it active so any resources you assign to tasks on it will see those tasks on their work list. Now we can go down to the Save icon, and we can just click Save, or we can also click Save and display project. So we'll actually see the project. So let's go ahead and click on that one. So that saves the project in the system, and it takes you to the task list form so that you can now start to enter your tasks. So you can see we've got our Financial Management System project, and this is our task list. Now remember, we didn't select a template when you created this project, so you have a blank task list. If you did select a template, then you would have a predefined list of tasks already set up, and then you could just edit them or add new ones or delete ones as appropriate for this specific project work. Now to start adding tasks in this blank task list, you're going to use inline editing. Inline editing lets you enter data right on this form without having to go to another layer or another form. So this lets you quickly and easily set up your project. Now what you're seeing here right now is your standard task list view with some standard fields. And these are the main ones that you need to enter when you're creating a task. So all you have to do to add a new task is click in the name field in this gray blank line and type the task name, such as determine, let's see, or define requirements. So that's the first thing that we need to do. Now to navigate to the other task fields, you can just click Tab to tab through them. And you can also click Shift-Tab to move backwards. And you could also just click right in a field to go to it. Now, that's kind of moving around on the task list. What you're going to learn next is the difference between this column we have here called duration, and then also this column here that we have called work hours. Now, if you hover on any of the columns, you are going to see a little tip to tell you what that column is. And you can also make your columns wider or smaller by just hovering your cursor anywhere in that column until your cursor changes to that double arrow, and then dragging it bigger or wider. So you don't have to hover on the line in between. You actually hover just right in the column itself to change the width of that column. Now work, or your work hours, are the actual effort or actual time that it takes to complete the task. Duration is the length of time it is going to take you to do all of that work. Now work and duration can be the same if you are working 100% of your time on a task. But if you are not working 100% of your time on one task, then the work and the duration are going to be different. So to enter work and duration, just click in the duration field and enter 5. So this 5 in the duration column specifies days. Now, tab out of the duration, and you'll see that your work hours got automatically set to 40. So there are some settings in Project Insight that told it to assume that the work hours were going to be set automatically to equal the duration. So what it did was it took the average work hours per day from that work calendar that you saw earlier and multiplied it by the duration to get this total work hours. So if you let the task like this, it means that it's going to take you 5 days to complete this task, and you're going to be working on it 100% of your time, or 40 hours. However, in reality, you're often splitting your time between tasks on this project and another project, or maybe even non-projects related activities. So to see how that would work, let's assume this task is really only going to take 20 hours of actual effort, not 40. So we're going to change our 40 to 20, and then we'll tab out of the work hours field. So you can see that our duration still remains at 5 because that's what we had previously entered. But during that 5 days, you are only spending 20 hours of your time, or 50% of your time on this task. You are spending the other 50% of your time on something else. So that's the the definition of duration and work. So duration is entered in days if you enter the information in the duration column. If you want to enter in less than 1 day of duration, then where it says this hours and minutes, that's also a duration column, and it's where you can enter in less. So if you wanted to enter in like 4 hours, you would just click in there and type in like your 4 hours. And work hours are always entered in hours. Now the next fields that you're going to enter for the task are your start and your end date. Now you can enter in specific start and end dates, which are often referred to as a constraint date. Or you can let the software apply intelligent scheduling rules to calculate the start and end dates for you. So to hard code in specific dates, you can just click in the date field and type in a date. Or you can also click on that calendar icon. And when you do that, you are getting a little message that says you have manually entered a task start and a task start date and time. And so it's going to apply constraints. So we'll just click OK. So you can also click in the calendar, and you could just choose, a start date from the calendar if you want it. Now, once you enter in or hard code in that date, then that will be used to schedule the task. But alternatively, you want to let the system automatically determine the dates for you. So let's erase that date and leave it blank. So leave your start date and your end date blank, and just click the save icon to save that information. So when we do that, it's actually saying you have a must start on constraint date for this task. So remember, we put in a hard-coded date. So it put a constraint on it. And now it's saying you don't have any dates, so do you want to remove that constraint? So we're going to click OK to remove the constraint and let Project Insight automatically calculate that start and end date. So when Project Insight is automatically calculating the start and end date, you'll see that the start date got set to May 1st because that was the scheduled start date of the project. So that's when we said when we added this project that we thought that this project was going to start. So because we have no constraints and we don't have any predecessors, the start date's automatically going to get set to that project scheduled start date. Now the end date got set to the start date plus 5 days of duration or 5 days after the start date. Now, in our calendar, it's also got 5 a.m. and 2 p.m. as our end, so we'd have to go and check our calendar, but we've probably got it set so that our workday is starting at 5 a.m. instead of maybe a traditional 8 a.m. or 8:30 a.m. and ending at 2 p.m. Now, to see further how that scheduling works, let's hover on the edit icon up over here. So this is the edit icon to edit the task. Up over here in the upper right-hand corner is the edit icon to edit the project. So let's hover on that and select Edit Project. So you can see we've got our May 1st start date. So let's click on that and let's change it maybe towards the end of May, maybe the 25th. And then hover on your save and click Save and Display Project. So now you can see that the start date of that task got changed to the 25th as well. And then the end date got pushed out to reflect a new end date based on that new start date. So again, any task that doesn't have a hard-coded constraint date and isn't dependent on any other tasks will just automatically have their start date scheduled to be the start date of the project. And then the end date is the start date plus your duration. Now, any other tasks that may be dependent on this task will be automatically shifted if you change those dates as well. So that's part of the intelligent scheduling, and it makes it very easy when you're doing planning to shift projects and optimize your portfolio of active projects. So you've seen how the inline editing works. Now with inline editing, you can very easily add a new task or edit an existing task right on the task list form that's displaying the information. So that's this form and the columns that you've got displayed here. However, there is a lot more information that can be entered about a task than what is showing on this task list. Now to see all those details for a task, you want to right-click on the task, and then a set of menu options come up that are specific to tasks. So we're going to hover on this one called Edit Task Inline, and then we're going to go over to our Edit Task Full from the submenu. And that takes you to our Task at Edit form, where you can see all the data that you can enter for a task. So this includes, the name, your duration, your work hours, but there's also a lot more information here as well. So for example, you have a resource type role that you can select, and that is the type of resource that is required to complete the work on this task. And if we click in the drop-down for that, we can click on the role required for this task. So maybe we need a business analyst. And then we can click Save. Now that resource type role field is not currently displayed on this task list form, but you can add it to the form by clicking the Display Options icon. And what that does, it lets you apply certain filters to the information that is displayed, so you can only see certain tasks, but it also lets you set the columns that appear on the task list. And you do that in this column selection options section. So right now this section is expanded out, but you can just click on the header to expand or collapse it if it's not already showing. So in here you have all the available columns that you can put on the task list. And if you start to scroll down, you can see all the different available data elements. And you can see there's quite a lot of them. Now you also have the selected columns. So in this list, it actually shows what data fields that are going to show on your task list. So you can add any columns of data from your available columns to your selected columns so that you can see it on the task list, and then you can also use the inline editing on it. So to move around in the available columns, you can just do that scrolling, or you can also click anywhere in the available columns and then type in the first letter of the name of the column that you want to go to. So we're going to type in an R, and that takes us directly down to the column starting with R. And you can see the very first one that you have listed is your resource type and role. And we're going to actually add that, and you can do that a couple ways. You can just click on it, and then you can click this right arrow icon, and that'll move it into the selected columns. Or you can double click on it, and that moves it over as well. Now you see that it put it at the end of the list in your selected columns, but you can change that order. So just click on the resource type role, and then click on the up arrow to move it upwards so it's next to our resources column. And then once you've done that, you just go ahead and click the update display icon. So now you can see that that resource type role column is showing, and it's displayed on our task list, and is showing the role that we entered when we went into a full add edit mode. Now, to see how that kind of works with the inline editing, let's add in another new task. So we do that by clicking again in that gray blank line that's on the form and entering in the name, such as documentation. And let's enter in 2 days of duration. We'll leave our work hours set as our 16 hours. And then we just click in the drop-down for the resource type role. So we can see we can set that resource type role right from here now that it's showing on our task list instead of having to go to the full task edit form. So we can click the role required. So maybe it's a trainer that's responsible, and then we can click Save to save that task. So what we did was change our default task list view by adding that additional column of data. So if this was a view that you wanted to reuse again, not only on this project, but other projects as well, you can actually save this view. So to do that, click back on your display options icon, and in our column selection options section, there is this thing called quick selection. And if you click in the drop-down for the quick selection, you can see that there are some different views available. So these views are predefined system views, and you're not able to change or delete them. So for example, we can click on the planning view. So this is the default system view that's set up and the view you were using when you first displayed that task list. Now you can see that when you selected that view again, the selected columns change and the resource type role is no longer showing. Now since you are going to be entering the resource type role for every task, you want that column showing here in your selected columns. So let's add it back in. Now this time though, before you add it back in, you want to click on the column predecessors in the selected column. And what that is going to do is if you have a column selected here in your selected columns before you add it from the available, it will put your new column directly before the highlighted one. instead of putting it at the end of the list like it did it before. So let's again click anywhere in available columns, enter an R to go directly to our resource type role, double click on it, and then you can see now instead of putting it at the end, it puts it right before that highlighted one. So it puts it right before the predecessors column. And then you can still click on it and you can still move it by using those up and down arrow icons. Now since you've changed the information on the view, that quick selection drop-down has changed from the planning view that you had selected before to something now called a custom selection. Now if you click on the drop-down for that again, you can see that the planning view is still there and you haven't changed that. You are just now creating your own custom selection view. And you can save this new view. So to save the new view with the resource type role, you just want to click on that edit and save icon. Then you type in the name for your view, so let's call it New Projects. And then if this is a view that you normally always want to use, then you can click on this option called My Default View. Then this will become your default view that's always used when you're displaying your projects. Now, since this is a system administrator that's logged in, so right now we're logged in as somebody that has system administration roles, you are seeing some additional options here, such as available as a global view and the global default view. So if you are a system administrator, you can create a view and then make it available to all other users so it appears in their drop-down list of views. Now you can also create a view and set it as the default for everyone in the system. And this only works, though, if a user hasn't set his or her own default view. But again, only a system administrator is going to have these other two options. Regular users will only be able to set their own default view. And then click that save icon to save that new quick selection. And then if you click in the drop-down, it now becomes one of the list of available views that you can choose from. And then just click anywhere on the white space on the form to exit out of the drop-downs. And then click the Update Display icon. And then again, that task list is now displayed with a new view with the resource type role column. So even though you've set a new default view, that default is only used to display new projects. The reason is that it's only used for new projects because Project Insight does remember the last view that was used on each project. For example, maybe on this project that we're working on now, we're going to go in and change our view to include a % complete. So click on the Display Options icon, and we want to insert our % complete just before the name. So in the selected columns, we'll click on the name, and then we're going to double-click on the % complete column, and then click the Update Display icon. So you can see now over here you have a % complete on this task list view for this project. So Project Insight will remember that for your financial management system project, this was the view that was set, and it will use this view the next time your task list is displayed. It's not going to use any of the defaults. It's going to use the view that was set specifically for this project. And that's all a part of the usability of Project Insight. It knows that you changed the view for the current project for some specific business reason, so it's going to remember that view, and it keeps displaying the project with that view, so you don't have to go in each time and reset it. And then, once you've created views, if you do need to change them for whatever reason, it's just easy to do by clicking on that Display Options icon, clicking in the Quick Selection drop-down, clicking on a view. So, for example, let's click on this Financial Summary view, one of the pre-built views, and then click the Update Display icon. So now you've switched the views, and you're seeing actually some pretty different information. You're seeing the financial information about the project. So it was very simple to switch the views, and you can switch it depending on what you're doing. If you're creating the project, you might have one view. While you're managing the project, you might have some other views that you want to see. So you can just easily create those views and switch back and forth between them depending on what you're doing. So let's have a look again at the full task details. Now this time though, to access the full task details, we're going to go to our Add icon and we're going to add a task. So that takes you to the Task Add Edit form that you saw before. Now in some circumstances, you may want to use this form to add or edit the task information instead of doing it using the inline editing. Now normally you would use the task list and the inline editing for adding and editing information because it's just quicker and simpler to do it from there. And that way you're also going to have that focus view of just the data that you need, during the add instead of kind of like all the data for the task. However, sometimes you may need to see the full task data. So when you're here on the General tab, this is kind of all the general information that you have. But you can also click on Predecessors, and that's where you can set up predecessors. And you can also do that through the task list view. Then you can also enter in a description by clicking on the Description tab. And that's where you can enter a more detailed description of the task or other information such as instructions. And again, you can also put that description on your task list view. Then click on Resources. And this is where you assign resources to a task. Again, you can put your resources in your task list view. And, assigning resources to a task is covered in other detail in other training sessions. But finally, let's click on Advanced. Now, some of the options in the Advanced tab are not actually available on the task list and using inline editing because they are just that. They're advanced options. So, and some of these are also inherited from like your system default settings. So you're usually only going to change the information here if there are exceptions that are occurring. So you don't come to the Advanced tab on a regular basis. It's more on an exception basis. And lots of these are covered in some other training sessions as well, but just to give you an idea where you can get to them. So let's click Cancel to exit out of our full task add and edit. So now you're going to see a couple of the other functions that you can do on a task list. So let's click on our display options icon and click in our quick selection drop-down. And let's change it back to our new projects view and click the update display icon. So now we're kind of back in the mode where we're creating a project. So let's add in another task. Again, you just click in that gray blank line and let's put in design. And we'll enter in 4 days for duration. And we'll just leave everything else as the defaults and click the save icon. And now you have 3 tasks. But let's say, for example, these tasks are in the wrong order, and you actually want design to come before documentation. So to move it, all you need to do is hover your cursor anywhere on the task line that you want to move, and then click and drag it to the task that you want it to come after. So I'm going to move design to come after define requirements. So you can see it's just moved the task and reordered it. Now when you're doing that, in some circumstances, you may get some additional prompts that will come up when you move the task. So just make sure that if you see those additional prompts, you read the text and then pick the appropriate response. So you've seen how to add a new task using the inline editing. You can also edit an existing task with inline editing. So to edit a task, you can just click on that edit icon that you saw earlier, and you want to click on it for the task that you want to edit. Or alternatively, instead of clicking the edit icon, you can just double click anywhere on the white space on the line to go into edit mode. So this is a quick way to enter edit mode. Just ensure that when you're double clicking, you're not clicking on an actual existing field, such as the name or like a predecessor or something like that, because instead it's going to link you to some other forms because those fields are hyperlinked. And then if you want to get out, you can just hit enter, and that'll save your information and exit you out of edit mode. You know, you can also click save here to save it, which is the same thing, or you can also click cancel. So again, if you click on like define requirements or any of these other fields, it will do some hyperlinks. So make sure if you're going to go into that edit mode using double clicking that you always do it like on a white space on the form. Now the last way that you can enter edit mode is by hovering on the task and right-clicking. And you saw this a little bit earlier, but basically what this does is it brings up, you know, a set of menu items that are specific to that task. So if you click on Edit Task Inline, so that main menu option, it puts you into the edit mode as well. So that's kind of like another way that you could get into edit mode. And let's click Cancel to exit out of that edit mode. Now, if you're on a task and you right-click, it brings up options for the task. If you are on the white space on the task list form and you right-click, it brings up menu options related to the form, not the task. So you can see you can actually add a task right from here as well instead of going up to the add here or clicking in the gray blank line. And again, if you click on the column headers, it brings up menu options that are specific to those headers. So right-clicking is a quick way to get to different menu options. Just ensure that you're hovering on a task if you want task-specific menu options. So remember, they're context sensitive, so wherever you right-click, it's going to bring up menu options specific to where you're right-clicking from. Now, the last function that you need to understand when building your first project is being able to set a summary task. So to set one of these tasks that you've already got entered as a summary task, double-click on the white space anywhere to go into the edit mode. And then you can see here in this first column, which is called, if I expand this out, it's called the Action Options column. And you'll see that when you're in either Add or Edit mode, you can click on that Advanced Options icon. And the Advanced Options layer appears. And then all you have to do is make a task a summary task, is click on Is Summary, and then click Save. So when a task is designated as a summary task, it changes to have a gray arrow next to it. So this arrow indicates to you that this is a summary task. Now, if you're adding a new task, so for example, if we were adding a new task down here at the bottom in the gray blank line, you can see that Advanced Options icon is available as well. So when you're adding a new task, while you're doing the add, you can also set it to be a summary task. So let's type in test as our new task, then click that Advanced Options icon, and we're going to click on Is Summary, and then we'll click Save. And again, it puts an arrow next to it, so it indicates that this is now going to be a summary task. Now, if you want to change a task to a summary task after it was added, just hover on the task and right-click to bring up those menu options. Then we want to click on, hover on the Edit Task Inline and click on Edit Advanced Options. And then you get that Advanced Options window as well. And then you just click on it to set it as Is Summary. And then click Save. And again, that one sets to a summary task as well. All right, so that kind of brings us to the end of our agenda items today, and hopefully you've got all the information that you need to go in and start to create and build your first project. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to Denise for some closing slides, and if anyone has any questions, you can go ahead and type those into the questions box. Denise.
Thank you so much, Angie. So I do have one last poll question coming right up. I'd like to know how helpful was today's session. If you can please provide us with some of your feedback by clicking one of the 4 options on your screen. All right, so let's go ahead and close and share our results. All right, awesome. So it looks like 20% of you found it extremely helpful. Another 20% of you found it very helpful. And 60% of you found it moderately helpful. We do encourage those of you who found it moderately helpful to please provide us with some feedback so we can know what you're looking for. And if you have any questions, you can always feel free to email those to info@projectinsight.net, and we'll be more than happy to answer those questions. So hopefully next time this session will be extremely helpful for 100% of you. With that said, I'm just going to go over a few closing slides. If you're on social media, I'd like to invite you to join us on Twitter. Our handle is @ProjectInsight. You can also follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, and of course, you can always like our page on Facebook. For those of you that are not currently PI customers and would like to reach out to us, feel free to do so via phone, email, or request your demo at projectinsight.net. If you'd like to request that demo as of now, I do have a link provided for you. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste that link into your chat box. Please feel free to click on the link, which will take you directly into our request information form. Go ahead and fill that out, and one of our Project Insight representatives will be more than happy to contact you. And finally, in our Project Insight community, you'll find many recorded videos and webinars for you to watch and learn from. You can sign up for your next product training, project management training, or IT methodology training. So that is all we have for you today. We'd like to thank Angie for a great session, and of course, thank our audience as usual for your time, and we do hope to have you on board next time. Have a great day, and thank you so much, guys.